What directions or decisions have you disagreed with pertaining to your own political party, the Democratic Party, and how did you respond?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things I would say is that as a state representative, what my main goal has been to represent my district, right? Regardless of whether it's in line exactly with where the Democrats are or where the Republicans are. And so with regard to that, I think my district does vary a little bit with Democrats on some of the I don't know, fiscal policies, I guess, that you'd look at. And so some of the things that I have, like tort reform, I have been not with the Democratic Party on every single aspect of that. I think that there is a balance that we need to strike between plaintiffs' rights and the rights of people on the other side of the aisle. That's one where I've broken. I voted for the stadium up in the Twin Cities, which wasn't necessarily a partisan issue, but among some Democrats, particularly up in the cities, that was an issue that they didn't want to, they didn't think we should go in that direction, and I thought that it was good for the state of Minnesota. So those are some of the places where I differed.
Okay. I keep hearing people say that they kind of are getting sick of the banter back and forth between Democrats and Republicans, and basically playing blame game of who's at fault for what decisions have been made in the past, or even decisions that are being made right now. Can you give me some examples in which you've tempered that situation toward a positive collaboration?
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things that benefited me as a state legislator is that I came in for my first 4 years as a member of the minority. The Democrats were we didn't have the majority from 2003 to 2007, when it was my first 2 terms. And as a result, I think you have to learn to work across party lines, because that's the only way you get things done for your constituents. And so I was able to work, for instance, on the eminent domain reform. I worked with Republicans to get that passed, and kind of led my Democratic caucus on that issue, to make sure that individual rights are recognized in that type of, when governments are taking property. I did on some electoral reform. I worked across party lines to get that done. I work in the pension area quite a bit, and we've had to work very bipartisanly to reform that system to make sure that pensions are safe and secure, but that the taxpayers' dollars are also being watched after effectively. So a lot of the work that I've done in the legislature, I'm actually really proud of. In the 7 years of that I've been able to accomplish a lot in the legislature, and the only way you get that done really is working across party lines in most circumstances. I would also say, however, that sometimes the bantering that the public sees, or the bickering they see back and forth, is rooted in some things that are very deep, that there's deep values differences between the two parties sometimes. And I think there's actually some value in having that discussion going on as we work out as a society which side of the line we're going to be on, and at the end of the day, that's what elections are really all about. So it's a balance you got to strike. You got to stick with your values and your principles all the time, but to the extent that you can compromise on how you get there, I think that's really important. And I think if you look at my record, you'll see a lot of that going on.
Okay. So let's say that healthcare reform is not fulfilled at a federal level to your satisfaction. Is there anything you would hope to accomplish at a minimum for the people of Minnesota if you were elected governor?
Yeah, well, and I do a lot of work on healthcare, and I'm very hopeful that they'll get some things done at the federal level. My biggest concern about the federal reform is that they leave Minnesota enough flexibility to kind of keep moving ahead while the rest of the country catches up. And I've been really proud of work I've done to provide healthcare for kids. I've carried legislation, covered all kids legislation, that has resulted in about 40,000 more Minnesota kids being able to see a doctor when they need to. The things that I'm looking for in healthcare reform that we really need to get after, and this is coming from traveling all over state talking to people, and what their concerns are, getting rid of pre-existing conditions as a reason for denial of healthcare. That's something that we need to change. I do think we need to start looking very hard at alternatives to a pure employer-based system. It's under tremendous stress. Businesses are suffering under it. People are trapped in jobs that they needn't be trapped in, and so I think we need to move away from that and think about how we're going to accomplish that. And I think we need to restore the doctor-patient relationship to the heart of our healthcare system. There's too many other people kind of interfering with the decision-making going on in that relationship that we need to change. We need to change that and get that back to the heart of how we build the system. The last thing we really need to do, and would change things dramatically, is move away from a way of paying for healthcare that is all about procedure by procedure. So if you go to the mechanic, you would be charged, for every screw that they and every part that they do to fix your car, plus the time to do every one of the little things, turning the screw in, turning the screw out. We need to pay for people to fix the engine or to keep people healthy. We need to pay our medical professionals to do that. And I think if we did that, that would fundamentally change everything else and actually save us costs, which we have to do, and actually provide higher quality health care.
Okay, so you grew up in Bloomington, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Population there is estimated at about 81,000.
And it was about that when I was growing up, yeah.
Roughly 4 times the size of all of Fillmore County.
Right.
Fillmore County is estimated about 20,000 residents for the entire county. Roughly 76% of the businesses in Fillmore County have 5 or less employees. The largest cities in Fillmore County are Chatfield with about 2,500 and Spring Valley is about 2,300 population. Looking at the local economy here is heavily dependent upon small business growth and development. Particularly over in Rushford, there's nanotechnology being pursued there. There's all kinds of different little things that are happening in each location that have tremendous opportunity for growth. But one thing that would be a concern for people in Fillmore County, very much a different setting than if you were to drive up to Bloomington, Minnesota. How coming from the big city,
right?
How will you relate to the needs of the people of Fillmore County?
Well, and I think that's a very fair question. And what I would say, first of all, is that during this campaign, and we've been at it about a year now, we've spent far more of our time, far greater part of our time outside the metro area than we have in the metro area, traveling around. We've now hit 74 counties out of the 87 in the state, really listening to people. And these aren't just press stops. These are going and trying to sit down with people and listen to people. We were in Chatfield, I don't know, about 2 months ago at a forum where we were kind of listened to what was going on in the area. So I think that's the first thing, that understanding that this is a big state, and it's very clear to me. It was before, but even more clear now, that this is an incredibly diverse state. And I think one of the big lessons I've learned from this campaign that's influenced my legislative thinking, and what influences me as governor, is that you can't have a one-size-fits-all solution to things from St. Paul. So those are kind of some preface things. The thing about this is a question that comes up a lot, and I think is a really challenging question for policymakers, is how do we make sure that the communities in greater Minnesota continue to thrive in an economy that's changing really rapidly. And I think one of the things that you mentioned, which is understanding that new technologies can take off anywhere, and we need to disseminate the benefits of the research and development that's going on in the state across the state and support that, is really important. Another thing that I think that we can do very specifically is to create incentives, whether it's through the tax code or other things, to allow individuals that live in a community to keep their wealth here, so that they can pool their dollars together in an effective way to keep businesses here or to build new businesses, but not in a situation where someone comes in from outside and they sell their stuff, but the wealth all goes somewhere else. And I think that we can create these types of investment pools that would help that very much.